Welcome into Fantasy Focus Football. It is Thursday, September 14th. My name is Daniel Dopp, joined by Field Yates. Today's show is presented by Geico. Switch to Geico, see all the ways that you could save. Field, how you doing today, bud?
I am doing great. It's Thursday, which means we get football again. That's the best part about the regular season is that we wait, 7 months during the offseason for football. And I actually consider it more like 8.5 because while I love the NFL playoffs, a full Sunday slate is just so different than the conference championship games when you only have 2 games and the Super Bowl, which you have 1 game in 2 weeks. Then you get to the season and you're like, you wake up this morning, you're like, holy crap, there's football again tonight.
Yes.
Like I had to make sure I had all my lineup set. You should do the same because we have Eagles and Vikings, which we will be previewing in just a matter of moments.
Field, we don't have to go more than 2 days now until the end of December. Every 2 days we're going to get football, right? Monday Night Football is over, so you have Tuesday, Wednesday, back on Thursday. Right. Then you got Friday, Saturday. Then you're back on Sunday, assuming you don't even watch college football.
Which you should be.
A lot of people are watching college football.
It's not a great slate for week 3. It's week 3 for, week 4 for college football.
No,
I always get confused because they have that stupid week 0, right?
What is that?
Whatever.
It's like a red shirt week? Is that what that is?
Yes, it's a red shirt weeks. It's the 3rd week that most teams are playing college football this weekend. The 4th weekend that we have technically had college football. Not a great slate. That being said, Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes playing host to College Game Day this weekend. That alone makes me think this could be a must-see game against Colorado State, their in-state rival.
I feel like even if you don't like Deion Sanders, you've got to tune in it is appointment viewing at this point.
Totally.
Right now.
And they have a couple of legit NFL players on that roster. Of course, their quarterback, Shedeur Sanders, who is draft eligible this year, will be a part of that conversation if he decides to declare for the 2024 NFL draft. We'll be talking about him in fantasy in a very short period of time.
All right, Field, like you said, we are going to preview our Thursday night football game.
Yes.
We got a bunch of rankings. It's almost like, here's the deal. Fridays are such a beefy show, Field.
Yeah.
When we talk about rankings, not only on Wednesday, but especially today on Thursday, today's kind of like a little mini primer of our preview for tomorrow.
Right, it's like a preview to the preview. Last year we did Thursday game previews. This year, sort of a hybrid of like game previews plus topic previews.
Right.
I feel like today there will be more important burning questions tomorrow, but those require a bit more context, like one more day worth of practice to see whether guys are available or guys miss another practice, injury-related stuff. But today we'll do our best to dive in on some important topics on Thursday. So get yourself a little bit ready today and then tune back in tomorrow for the full preview of the Week 2 slate. A reminder that we know that not everybody, almost everybody, but not everybody listens to every show.
Right.
So some of the stuff that we talk about from one day to the other could be things you've already heard before, but they're that important that we wanted to give them plenty of opportunities to be talked about during the week.
Totally. And we're going to dive into the Thursday night football, like we said, a bunch of these rankings. But first, Field, I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
This has nothing to do with football.
Oh.
Yesterday, Rosie and I were hanging out at the house.
Okay.
Playing some music. And as a part of playing music, we're actually like playing music. Whoops,
like you are like guitar,
like physically playing music. Yeah. So Rosie a little bit ago started.
You play everything. What were you playing in this case?
I was playing piano here in this case.
Oh wow.
And she was playing ukulele. A shout out to my dude. This is one of my favorite things.
Okay.
Sweetwater is a place where I get all of my musical instruments from.
Okay.
Love those guys. I got a buddy named Anthony Giraldi that works over there that hooks me up. So like Anthony set us up with you. Rosie wanted to be able to get a ukulele.
Okay.
Got one.
Okay.
The song that she was practicing yesterday on ukulele.
Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
No, that was close. You might think maybe like a Taylor Swift song, maybe something.
I don't know. I was thinking something that's sort of like, Pacific Islander vibes.
How about Welcome to the Black Parade by My Chemical Romance?
You know something, Daniel? I didn't have that one on my bingo card. That would have been that would have been probably the last song I would have guessed on a ukulele.
Here's the
How
thing.
did it sound?
It's the cutest thing in the world.
Really?
I texted you this morning. I was like, do you know this song? Because I didn't want to assume that you knew My Chemical Romance.
Yeah, other than like the Coco Melon theme song, I know like 4 other songs. So this happens to be one of the 4.
So it was just super cute. If you've never like listened to a ukulele version of what is a very old emo song that is super fun, like it was just the most fun in the world. It made us talk about when you listen to music.
Yeah.
Do you send music to friends because you're like, dude, you got to check this out. This song is a banger. Listen to this. Or are you like, Guys, these lyrics just crushed me. Like, which one? There's no wrong way to listen to music.
Okay.
When you listen to it, which way do you listen to music? Does the music get you first, or do you get all pumped up because of the lyrics?
I don't know if my answer is either of those things. Here's what I'm guilty of.
Okay.
And I'm the worst. I have like zero musical range whatsoever.
I love listening to you sing.
I pretty much find, yeah.
You come in and you're so
can't
pumped.
do it on this show because I think we'd have to pay somebody a lot of money. But I pretty much listen to one song like 1,000 times in a row, and then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, it's not good anymore.
Now I'm over it.
Right, so that's like I'm the worst when it comes to music. Again,
Okay.
Coco Melon theme song, right there.
All in.
Couple of the Miss Rachel jingles for those that shout out the GOAT Miss Rachel. Besides that, pretty limited music range.
Do you think Travis Kelce likes Taylor Swift because of her music or because of her lyrics or because of
maybe
just
everything?
Yes,
maybe the rumors right there are starting to become a little stronger and stronger by the day.
Quietly hanging out. We're talking about it on this show. That's how quiet their hangouts are.
We will have to talk about that more. If it becomes verified and legitimate, we'll have to talk about what that means for Travis Kelce's fantasy value, because just when I thought when he's healthy he couldn't have any more fantasy value, dating Taylor Swift, if that's real,
Hey, now.
we might have to reclassify him as a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. He might be the best at every position.
As if Travis Kelce did not have enough championships under his belt as a Super Bowl champion. How about going out to TrophySmack.com?
What a professional segue.
That's right. Get a little belt here for your fantasy team.
Okay.
Hashtag focus belt. Not hashtag, excuse me. Use the code focus belt with that. All right. Let's dive into our news today. Field, we got two quick things.
Yep.
We're going to be quick on because we'll talk about it more tomorrow.
Okay.
First one is Raheem Mostert did not practice yesterday.
Yes.
I was surprised about that.
God.
Did not see a lot from the Dolphins running backs in week one. Him being banged up heading into week two. Want to hear more from Stephania tomorrow. Doesn't give me good vibes, though.
Okay, so here's the good news. Subsequent reporting after the Dolphins injury report basically said this is just a maintenance day.
Okay, great. That feels better.
And I know that there are a lot of people that are like, oh, what do you know? Raheem Mostert hurt again, because he has had an injury history, both in his time in San Francisco and then more recently in Miami as well. But it sounds like a rest day for him. He's still primed for a pretty darn good role. I've got him as a top 25 play this week against the Patriots. They'll have to run the ball. Well, I think they will run the ball a little bit more. I don't think this Sunday night's going to be as much of a track meet as last Sunday was for the Dolphins, because A, Patriots defense, I think, is better than the Chargers, and B, their offense is not as good as the Chargers. This feels like more of a slightly lower scoring game than that 70-point affair we saw in LA in week one.
Speaking of the Chargers, Austin Eckler, another guy that has had an ankle injury, banged up at practice. Interested to see what happens here and what Stephania has to say. Something to keep in mind.
He officially did not practice on Wednesday. It was both because of the ankle and then actually like really sad news. Austin Eckler's agent passed away recently. Had a battle with cancer, 38 years old. That one hits you like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
He had an agent who worked at an agency that was a little smaller. That is a little smaller. It's not like he was one of 500 clients in the NFL that this agent had. So I got to imagine this is a pretty strong bond he had with his agent, who of course helped him this offseason when they were trying to figure out whether he would get traded or whether he would stay with the Chargers on an amended contract. So if we see Austin Eckler on Sunday, it sounds like he'll be playing with a bit of a heavy heart, if you will. So really difficult and unfortunate news really there.
Tough one.
For his agent, Cameron Weiss.
All right, we will keep up on that one and have more with that tomorrow. Field. Let's talk about Thursday night football.
Let's do it. Yep, Thursday night football.
Lineup locks for this Thursday night football game.
Who do you got?
Vikings and Eagles.
Yeah.
I'm thinking you got Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I'm agreeing on that one.
Alexander Madison.
Yes, I will agree on that one. Although we can talk about it. I think there are people that are a little more people that were not super enthused by the week one output.
Color me as one of them.
He was fine. I mean,
he was fine, but I wanted a little bit more from that. I think TJ Hawkinson is a lineup block here. And then you look at the other side of the football, you're talking Jalen Hurts and the two wide receivers, A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith.
Yes, agreed all the way around there. I think that there are, and I'll just say this on Alexander Madison, is that you're right. Like, it wasn't a monster day for him. He did find the end zone. But what was the billing on Alexander Madison for the season? Should lead the Vikings in running back opportunities by a healthy margin.
Yep.
A very good offense with enough pass catching acumen to be a factor in the passing game as well. And that's what he did,
that's
right?
What
he was clearly their starting running back.
Yep.
We saw a little bit of Ty Chandler, but not nearly enough to make you nervous.
Only 4 touches to Madison's 14.
Yeah, so 14-4. You want that number to be more like 17 or 18 for Addison, but we always talk about like if a guy can get 15 to 20 opportunities, he got 14. So we're not that far off. So I actually thought it was fine for Addison given the preseason expectations. If it was like he wasn't being drafted as a top 12 running back, he was being drafted as like a top 20 running back.
Yeah. I think the question here for me, if you have Kirk Cousins, and I don't know, if you drafted Kirk Cousins, Field, you probably drafted him either as you just punted at the quarterback position. I can't imagine you grab Kirk Cousins as a QB2 unless you're in a 2-quarterback league, really.
Probably not. Yeah, I mean, we've had this conversation quite a bit recently about, like, at what point are the players that we're talking about at quarterback not the guys that someone drafted as their obvious starter coming into the season?
Yep.
And the idea that so many people drafted 2 quarterbacks this year, even more so than at least I can recall anecdotally in their leagues. But I think Cousins is sort of a fine fringe quarterback one. Let's talk about a couple of things here for Kirk Cousins. This team's going to throw the ball a lot because I think this team is still bad enough on defense. They were fine in week 1, but the Bucs are not quite the same challenge as I think the Eagles offense is,
fair.
right?
Yep.
But second is that this Eagles defense in week 1 did not look quite as dominant as the Eagles defense did last year.
No.
Let me check the number here. It was either 1 or 2 total sacks from the Eagles in week 1 against the Patriots. A year after they obviously led the NFL in sacks, were one of the great pass rushing teams of all time last season.
Jalen Carter at defensive tackle in the draft.
And he was tremendous, and they got a ton of pressures, but sacks are obviously a different statistic for a reason here. But this Eagles defense through 1 week looks a little more reasonable to throw against than it did last year when it felt like kind of a, like this impenetrable force. Not only that, James Bradbury, excellent cornerback for the Eagles, he's out tonight. Nakobe Dean, linebacker for the Eagles, stepped into a starting role after they lost multiple starters in free agency.
Yep.
He's on IR. He's out for 4 weeks. So 2 key elements for the Philadelphia defense out tonight. Good enough reasons for me to feel like Cousins is a borderline top 10 quarterback. I've got him as quarterback 11. I feel like the detractors are going to point out the fact that he seems to always struggle in prime time. I don't give a crap about that kind of stuff, Daniel. Like, that's a much more of a real life thing than it is a fantasy thing in my estimation. I think he'll be fine tonight against Philadelphia in a game that quietly feels like close to a must-win for Minnesota.
Absolutely, especially starting out 0-1. Here's the thing. I think that the Philadelphia Eagles, especially their offense, did not look like what we expect it to look like here in week 2 and week 1 against the Patriots.
Yep.
I assume they're going to score a lot more points, and as a part of that, because this Viking defense, I don't think is as good as the Patriots defense.
Agreed.
Cousins, and this offense is going to have to keep up. I think we're going to see more of the Eagles offense that we were used to seeing this week. So obviously no panic for us on the Eagles from that standpoint, but if they are having to keep up, it's not just Justin Jefferson. It's not just TJ Hawkinson. It's the idea that Jordan Addison, who got in the end zone in week 1, Field Yates, is a potential flex play here for us in week 1.
Week 1 told you so.
Sorry, week 2.
Week 1 told you so. Touchdown for Jordan Addison.
You
there.
did.
Sorry about that one. I got his wide receiver 37 this week. And so reasons for optimism. You talked about the fact that this could be a positive game script for throwing the football tonight. A couple other things here. We mentioned James Bradbury.
Yep.
He's out. We think there's a chance that if last year is any indication, Darius Slay will guard and shadow Justin Jefferson. That means that the next best corner for Philadelphia will pay attention to either Addison or KJ Osborne.
Yep.
The bottom line is this: that next best corner, which if it's in the slot, it's Avonte Maddox. If it's not, it's more TBD. It's not James Bradbury.
Nope.
Right. It's not the guy who's making $16 million a year. So stock up there for Jordan Addison. I will say this, though. While I was thrilled by the performance, and he was awesome, 4 catches, 61 yards, found the end zone, highest scoring rookie wide receiver in week 1, not named Puka Nacua, of course, was Jordan Addison. He played 56% of the snaps in week 1. KJ Osborne played 91% of the snaps.
That's a lot more.
It is. And so I actually think that Osborne is the sneaky play here tonight if you're desperate in a deep league. Now, most people aren't willing to, if you're desperate because you're concerned about injuries elsewhere in your lineup, are not going to make that play right now on Thursday Night Football. They'd rather string it along and buy some time on players like Jacoby Myers, who are uncertain for week 2 on Sunday. But if you're really, really hamstrung and you are feeling not good about your flex options in a deeper league, you could definitely do a whole lot worse there than KJ Osborne. I would not be surprised if he has 5 catches or a touchdown tonight.
And I want to say this. We are talking, because I said it too, Addison and Osborne are potential deeper flexes for us, right? But on Thursday night football field, you do not want to actually play them in your flex position. You actually want them to be in your wide receiver spot to give you more flexibility for later in the week.
I think people, hopefully they get that. I'm sure much of our audience does. But for those that are a little bit greener to fantasy football, right?
Listeners,
we don't want to be dismissive of, like, we hope that there are a lot of people that are just getting started here on fantasy football that want to listen to our show. But the reason why you do that, as Daniel mentioned, is let's just say that you're planning on quote unquote flexing Jordan Addison. You throw him in the wide receiver spot because that leaves an extra flex spot that, just in case, and I don't want to wish this on anybody,
Correct.
but your normal starting wide receiver twists his ankle at practice today, and the only option you have on your bench that you think is serviceable is an extra running back. Well, you can't put that running back into your wide receiver spot.
Bingo.
You can put that player running back into your flex spot. So just a heads up for those that haven't really dealt with that Thursday night dynamic before.
Yep, that's an always Thursday night game. All right, let's talk about these Eagles running backs field.
Okay,
I have
Yep.
almost no interest in starting any of them because I don't know how to feel about any of them. Kenny Gainwell was the guy that has the buzz. Yeah, he was the one that had the buzz coming into this week. So knowing that, are you trusting any of these other guys?
If Gainwell had played, I would have had him as a fringe top 20 option at running back. I would have said he felt like the kind of guy that, doesn't have nearly the upside as the guys that are must starts, but also has enough of a workload and a good offense that pretty darn good option for you. He's out. Here's what I said. I was talking about this with Scott Clark, one of our bosses here at ESPN Fantasy this morning, and I said, here's the deal. Someone's going to guess on this Eagles. If you are playing an Eagles running back tonight, if you're saying, hey, it's going to be DeAndre Swift, I'm totally convinced of it. Hey, I'm totally convinced that Rashad Penny is going to be active tonight and he'll take over the role that Penny played last week. Or, hey, Boston Scott does weird stuff. I'm going to start him because I know he's going to do some weird stuff tonight. Someone's going to be right. You're going to be rewarded for your audacity. In a perfect world, I would choose to go a different direction.
The confidence you just said with those statements, I don't have confidence in. And you're like, I know this is going to happen. Nobody should have that confidence
I'm not
in Eagles
sure.
running backs.
Nick Sirianni, their head coach, has no reason to commit to a back going into the game publicly. And as a matter of fact, it might be one where he's going to feel it out based off how the game is going. Obviously, I think all three of those guys will be active. Obviously, I think that all three of those guys will play a role. But Gainwell had 4 catches last week. I don't think Rashad Penny is getting those. He might get 12 carries tonight. DeAndre Swift was sort of a third down player last week. I think he'll play a few more snaps. Bottom line is that if you can, I would try to avoid this backfield. Someone might emerge tonight. And if after tonight, DeAndre Swift has 18 total touches and he seems like he's clearly the guy, obviously, I reevaluate going into week 3. I just think there are enough options elsewhere because nobody relied on any of those 3 guys in week 1 that I think you have a better option somewhere else.
Agreed.
That brings you a whole lot less risk than this Eagles backfield does.
I am totally with you on that. And because we're here in week 2, there's not any buys. You would think there's plenty of running backs on your roster that you could trust you have a little bit more confidence in. Speaking of confidence field, Dallas Goedert, 0 fantasy points last week. This is still a situation, though. Like, throw week 1 away. Yeah, it sucked. I don't know what to say about it. Is it going to be one of those games we look back at the box score at the end of the year and it's like, you remember that goose egg? That was tough. Dallas Goedert is still one of the 10 best fantasy tight ends in the game.
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do here, Daniel? Like, what's your option? Who are you going to start instead? Like, can you name the backup tight end that was available on waivers this week that you're saying to yourself, I'm going to start him? I'm not guaranteeing you that Dallas Goedert is going to outscore Luke Musgrave as an example this week. I'm just saying that we have a 4 or 5 year sample size of Dallas Goedert being a really freaking good player for the Eagles. And remember last year what happened in week 1 with Devontae Smith? 0 catches for the Eagles.
Remember what happened?
He went on to have a massive year. Exactly. Like week 1 is the ultimate game of chicken in some ways for fantasy managers going into week 2. I think Goedert bounces back. Even if it's on a blow-up game tonight, I'm still trusting him as a tight end 1 the rest of the season, especially with all the uncertainty. Obviously, we think Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews are going to play this week, and Darren Waller, but it has not been a roaring start here for tight end so far, Daniel.
No, it has not. I have not been thrilled with it. You know, everybody that basically started Tyler Higbee and Isaiah Likely last week thinking they were finding a tight end that they could start, like that just did not work out. We all felt bad afterwards.
Totally. It's like, who do you feel like going into week 1 amongst tight ends totally met their expectations based off how you drafted them coming into the season?
I don't think anyone really met expectations.
People exceeded, and people did not.
Exactly.
Right, but like, let's just go to the scoring leaders from week 1 to see which tight ends were about in line. I can't find the freaking scoring. There. Okay, I'm sorry. That you're like, yeah, that's about what I expected from them coming into the season. Okay, did you have? Going back to week 1 here. Sorry. Hunter Henry, tight end 1, 16.6.
Didn't have that.
Hayden Hurst, tight end 2. Okay, here's the answer. The answer is TJ Hawkinson as tight end 3. Hit 11.5 fantasy points, Daniel. So while tight end 3 part is good, it's not like this was something that we expected out of him to be, I think you would be hoping like tight end 3 finish. Oh, he probably got me 15 or 14 points. Who do you think?
Oh my gosh.
Look at the rest of the top 10.
Is gross.
Please
hilarious.
Read it.
Please read it for our listeners.
Top 10 tight ends in week 1 based off total points scored. You ready for this? Bam. Hunter Henry, Hayden Hurst, TJ Hawkinson, Donald Parham,
4,
Evan Ingram, Cole Kmet, Blake Bell,
6,
Sam Laporta,
7,
and Harrison Bryant.
That's 8. Harrison Bryant. Adam Troutman is 9. Logan Thomas is 10. Oh my gosh, how gross is the tight end position field?
It's so gross. Please come back, Mr. Taylor Swift, as soon as this week.
All right, that's why we're going to have Dallas Goedert in our lineups this week. All right, let's move ahead and talk about these other week 2 questions that we've got, Field Yates.
Let's
we're going to talk about a bunch of quarterbacks here. I want to set the table. One of the things I want to try and do is meet our fantasy listeners where they are at. And quarterbacks, I think, is a tough thing because sometimes with the people we're talking about, we're trying to decipher, did you draft them as your starting quarterback? Or is this a guy that you waited and grabbed as maybe your second QB? Because we've seen a lot more teams drafting second quarterbacks.
Yes.
We're talking about Anthony Richardson.
Okay.
So when talking about Anthony Richardson, do you think that Anthony Richardson was drafted by most people to be a starting quarterback in their fantasy leagues, or do you think that he was drafted as a backup?
I have 3 leagues with Anthony Richardson. I'm playing in 12 leagues this year, by the way. I think that's probably a worthwhile thing to imagine, to establish for people. I mean, it actually is like kind of average for where I've been in prior years. Now, people look at me like I have several heads, or people look at me like I have no life. Yes, definitely. And there are elements of that are truth. But 12 total leagues this year. I've got Richardson in 3 of them. Here are the circumstances under which I drafted him. 1, I had the first overall pick. I'm sorry. I had made the first quarterback pick. That was Patrick Mahomes. 2, I made the second quarterback pick. Also Patrick Mahomes. He's my backup in both of those cases. 3rd, I'm playing in a salary cap league, and he went for a meager $4 out of a $200 budget because most of the league had already kind of loaded up elsewhere at quarterback and it's a 6-point per passing touchdown. So in 2 of those leagues, and one of those leagues with Mahomes, 2 of those leagues with Mahomes, I'm like, whatever, I'm out, right? I'm starting Patrick Mahomes. He's awesome, right? The other one, though, I do have him in is Justin Herbert. And Justin Herbert, for me, is like a question mark. It's a coin flip of sorts in week 2 vis-a-vis Anthony Richardson, right? Richardson, obviously a superior runner who had 10 points with his legs last week. Meanwhile, Herbert and the Chargers, obviously Herbert's an amazing thrower of the football. Like, I'm not concerned about that part whatsoever. But they draw a Titans team that was obviously stingier against the run in the past, but that Titans defense can beat the crap out of you up front. So it's a conversation.
It is.
But I'm sticking with Anthony Richardson.
So I have him as a guy that if you drafted, usually as a deeper league, because I'm in with you in a lot of those same spots, right? If I drafted Anthony Richardson, a lot of times it's because I grabbed a Patrick Mahomes, a Josh Allen, a Jalen Hurts, and he is my QB2 or a 16-team quarterback where I just want to have depth. If you drafted him in a 16-team league as your only quarterback or a 12-team league where you were just like, I'm punting at the position, can you start Anthony Richardson this week after 1 week of seeing him play football?
He's your only quarterback, you said?
He is your only quarterback in a 16 or 12-team league.
I've got him as quarterback 10 this week. Excuse me, quarterback 10 this week. So he's unquestionably a startable quarterback if you're in a 16-team league. If you are one of those people like me that is in the circumstance of having drafted multiple quarterbacks, I think it's coming down close to a coin flip or a continue to sit because, like, I just thought it was a fun lottery ticket to take, even with Patrick Mahomes as my quarterback. What I'm hopeful for in both of those leagues is Richardson continues to play really well, and somebody says, crap, I want this year's Justin Fields. I'm willing to trade somebody, or if he gets hot enough and proves it, and my team is not sort of carrying its weight in other spots, I could parlay Patrick Mahomes into a legitimate player at wide receiver or running back.
That's what I was going to say. I think people might actually be more interested in trading for what they view as the more known commodity.
Yeah.
And if Anthony Richardson really does start doing those things, it wouldn't be crazy to think that you could get a boatload for those other quarterbacks that you have. I think it's really interesting. If you drafted Anthony Richardson as your starter, you could use him again this week. But if he was your QB2, I think we would keep rolling with the guy that you originally drafted as your quarterback.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about Tua. Same kind of conversation. I feel like if you drafted Tua, you likely either punted or waited at the quarterback position and didn't get the guy you want.
Yep.
I don't really view him as a QB2 kind of a guy. I don't think a lot of people went out and grabbed him. If like you grab Patrick Mahomes, he just wasn't a guy I wanted to grab as a upside QB2. That's what Richardson was for.
Play to win the game. Play to win the game, and you want upside, right? Yep. And that's what Tua presents with his arm. No doubt, it's a much more daunting
just
matchup.
Not with his legs at all.
And Mike is obvious. Mike is like it's like an angel devil thing on your shoulders, right? It's like the angel in me is saying the guy was quarterback one last week. It threw for 466 yards. He's an absolute stud. He's got the best wide receiver, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. How could you not want to start Tua? The devil is Mike when he's like, well, he did have spike games last year, and then we saw, fewer of those as the season wore on.
Yep.
I get it. Fantasy football, though, you play to win and you play with your heart and your emotions sometimes. I consider Tua a lineup lock as quarterback 7.
I totally agree with you. In spite of the fact that these Patriots held what was a Jalen Hurts led offense to just 12.5 fantasy points for Hurts in week 1, which is really tough.
Yeah, the Patriots defense is legit.
They're legit.
No doubt.
Yep.
All right, I've got him as quarterback 7, though.
Let's talk about Deshaun Watson. Would you consider benching Deshaun Watson this week after what we saw in week 1? And that's kind of a tough question because you and I both talk about the weather impacted this game in a pretty substantial way. Both Deshaun Watson and Joe Burrow were bottom 5 in completion percentage and off-target percentage. I don't think that's a thing that's a them stat. I think week 1 was really tough with the amount of rain that they got there.
Yeah, so that's a good stat, though. It was a good stat because that weather did suck there.
It really did. Do you think at that point Deshaun Watson is worth starting still, or would you want to look elsewhere?
So I've got him as quarterback 14, and I think that if you drafted Deshaun Watson, you probably did so as your quarterback 1, right? He probably was not your second quarterback. I'm fine with starting him in week 2. What you liked was the fact that he scored with his legs. He's still an awesome athlete. He had 5 rushing attempts for 45 yards and a touchdown. This will be an interesting test, though, on Monday night. Not just because it's the Steelers, who I always expect to play him tough, but also because the passing efficiency was once again poor. I have not looked at the weather for Monday night. I am hoping that on a Monday night in the middle of September, it's not going to be crappy weather wherever this game is. Where's this game being played? I don't even know.
That's a great question.
I should know this.
In Pittsburgh.
Okay, back-to-back home games for the Steelers. They better win on Monday night.
Seriously.
If they go 0-2 playing 2 games at home, that would be bad. But we have yet to see a game where Deshaun Watson as a Cleveland Brown looks like the old Deshaun Watson as a passer. If we get that, all of a sudden we'll be saying stock up as a fantasy player.
Correct.
If we don't, he might get you enough through his legs, but we will start to have that conversation about Deshaun Watson more and more and more. It's his birthday today, so you imagine he's like 28 years old. Like, I just can't imagine a guy falling off so precipitously, even after playing so little football for nearly 2 full seasons, that he would become a guy who was leading the NFL in passing yards and passing touchdowns to a guy who I'm asking whether he can put up like 250 passing yards in one game. It is crazy. I've got him as quarterback 14, though, for the week.
All right, let's talk about Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
This one is the ultimate emotional hedge. If you drafted Daniel Jones as your starting quarterback, you waited and you were like, you know what? I'm a Daniel Jones truther. I think he's going to be legit this year.
Yep.
You watched him get rocked on Sunday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
He scored Field Yates 4.5 fantasy points.
That seems bad, Daniel. It's the ultimate test of your patience here, though, because Daniel Jones might be a quarterback where if you drafted him as your quarterback 1, you bounced back later in the draft and said, I'm going to take an Anthony Richardson flyer or a Jared Goff flyer. Reasonable options to start over Daniel Jones. Here's what you did like, though, from week 1. Nothing except for the fact that it ran 13 times.
Thank you for saying nothing.
13 times. You liked nothing. What a pathetic performance, obviously, from
But 13
them, right?
carries, yes, I'm totally with you on that.
13 carries is good. And you are trusting in Brian Daboll and a few things also. I'm not trying to take the Giants off the hook entirely, okay? Your performance is your performance, and ultimately you get 18 opportunities to be judged in the NFL, 17 opportunities to be judged, and you got to make them count. How often is a team, though, going to have a blocked field goal, like that first drive of the game on Sunday night, you're like, man, like the Giants really are that well coached, and Daniel Jones is that much of an improved player. That game flew off the rails in a hurry on Sunday night. Blocked field goal turns into a touchdown. They have the pick by, was it Stephon Gilmore? I think it was. Daniel Jones, erratic decision to throw it.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, they continue to tumble down the stairs as opposed to picking themselves back up and putting on a respectable performance. That's not going to happen this week, in my opinion.
No.
This Cardinals team was frisky against the Commanders. I think the Giants make the Cardinals look more like what we expected them to look like coming into the season. I think Daniel Jones bounces back. I've got him as quarterback 12.
I do want to know that Darren Waller is going to be healthy for this game. That's a thing I know he's been dealing with.
Doesn't matter for me.
Doesn't matter for you?
Doesn't matter. No, because it's for Daniel Jones to be what I think he can be, it's going to be because he once again has double-digit carries and throws for 215 or so yards with a touchdown or two and 0 interceptions. I want to neutralize the turnovers, increase the rushing, and just be what he was last season.
year.
I'm fine with that.
I think that's part of, so I hear what you're saying. Part of the reason why I drafted Daniel Jones, if I did draft him in the leagues that I did, was because of Darren Waller being there and thinking, like you said, I'm going to keep getting that same rushing that we saw last year, but I thought that we would get a little bit more passing game usage here. And so I need
with Waller, you mean?
With Waller specifically. And he's just clear, far and away, like the
I'm tossing
best
that game
catcher.
out.
Okay, and that's fine. You want to toss it out? Then it's like, okay, it's kind of like a gut check conversation then for you here in fantasy. You going to start him or not?
Now, let me say something right now.
Uh-oh.
I have 0 Daniel Jones exposure this year. 0. So and there are very few players amongst running backs and wide receivers that I have 0 exposure to because, you obviously carry multiple
Especially
of
in 12
them,
leagues,
right?
yeah.
Yes. But a quarterback and tight end, it's actually plausible that you could have fewer of them, right? Like I've got enough Travis Kelce exposure. Like I've got 3 Travis Kelce teams, right? I've got 3 Patrick Mahomes teams. Like all of a sudden it's like, okay, that leaves you 9 and you just do the math. And like I have a couple of Mark Andrews teams, right? And a couple of Lamar Jackson teams.
Yep.
Anyways, at running back and wide receiver, it's hard to find a player I don't have some exposure to. I have no Daniel Jones exposure this year. And so I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Because
I
think
by design? Did you do that on purpose?
Not by design. But what I think it allows you to do when you don't have a player is when things are going poorly, it allows you to be level-headed enough to think back to what went right and can that happen again. Mm-hmm. When things are going so well for that player, it allows you to say to yourself, like, there's no way this can keep up, right? Because you have bad FOMO.
Right.
Like if Daniel Jones is, 5 straight weeks of being a 25-plus point scorer, I'll be saying to myself, but like he's still Daniel Jones. Like he's bound to have that screw-up game. Meanwhile, 1 game into the tank, like he was this past weekend, I'm like, hold on, guys. Daniel Jones showed last year he cannot turn the football over a lot, and he doesn't need to throw for 350 yards. He doesn't need a wide receiver or tight end 1 to be an effective fantasy starter. I'm counting on him bouncing back in week 2.
All right.
Do you think so or no?
I want him to bounce back. Do I think so? This is like a confidence check.
Let's do it.
It's a low confidence check for me.
Board betting?
Sure, let's do it.
Here's the deal.
Where do I have Daniel Jones?
You have him ranked one. You have him ranked.
I'm ranked ahead of you.
Yeah. So you choose. You don't have to board bet. You know what? Board bets are fun for me. I don't look at them as like, this
QB
we're not
11?
jousting. Yeah.
You want to do that? You want to just
top 11 quarterback?
Top 11 quarterback?
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah.
I say Daniel Jones is a top 11 quarterback here in week 2.
Hold on.
Yeah, because you're the one that's low. I know. We should really switch.
Can we switch anyways?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, fine.
Right. I think, and I'll switch my rankings later on. I think
don't have
Daniel
to. No,
Jones
it's fine.
is outside the top 11 at quarterback in week 2.
And I said Daniel Jones is inside the top 11 amongst quarterbacks in week 2. Put it on the board.
Put it on the board.
Hey, yo.
All right, there we go.
I got a good feeling on that one.
I don't know which way to feel because I did the opposite of what it is that I even ranked him as. You know what, though? That's fantasy football sometimes. That's how it works. All right, we're going to pay some bills here and talk some more rankings questions in a minute. But first, Geico asks, how would you love a chance to save some money on insurance?
I would love it.
Of course you would. And when it comes to great rates on insurance, Geico can help, like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, or RV, even help with your homeowners or renters coverage. Yep. Plus, add an easy-to-use mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance, and more. And Geico is a super easy choice. Switch today. See all the ways that you can save. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com or contact your local agent today.
Hey, college football fans, I'm going to let you in on a little secret that will help you win game days this season. Eckrich smoked sausage. You're probably asking yourself, Daniel, could it be that easy? Absolutely it is. Eckrich smoked sausage is crafted with a perfect medley of spices for a truly rich, savory taste. They're delicious all by themselves or in any recipe you can dream up. If the word recipe sounds like a lot of work, don't worry. Visit Eckrich.com for dozens of simple, mouth-watering recipes, making your tailgating prep a stress-free event. So there you go. Eckrich smoked sausage is the secret to winning game days. You can thank me later. Visit Eckrich.com for more, and that's ECKRICH.com. ECK like Dennis Eckersley, Rich like Stefania.com.
Hey. All right, football is back. Catch every pass, every tackle, and every heart-pounding play live and in person thanks to our go-to ticket source, Vivid Seats. Vivid Seats delivers great deals on great seats, and they have your back with their 100% buyer guarantee. Vivid Seats is the official ticketing partner of ESPN. It is offering you $20 off your first $200 ticket purchase with code FFF. That's code FFF. Download the app or visit vividseats.com today. Vivid Seats. Experience it live. All right, making our way through the biggest ranking questions for week 2. Fields Yates.
Yep.
In week 1, Jordan Love was a top 3 quarterback. There is a question mark as to whether or not Romeo Doubs will play here. We did not have Christian Watson in week 1. Think he will be here in week 2. If there is if there is a Christian Watson, which we are expecting, and someone that we would start, would you also still start Romeo Doubs after what his week 1 was?
I would not. I have him outside my top 40 for wide receivers. I have him outside my top 50 for wide receivers, assuming Christian Watson returns. There's a little bit of a good and bad thing here with Romeo Doubs.
Okay.
All right. Played really well in week 1 for fantasy purposes, right? 4 catches, 26 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
But look at that line a little bit closer. 4 for 26 with 2 touchdowns. He played under 50% of the snaps in week 1. Now, he was also banged up. Adam Schefter told us on Sunday morning he's going to play a limited role. His role should expand this week in what I think will be a week. He'll be healthier, right? Like that would stand to reason.
Yep.
But if Christian Watson plays, Jordan Love had 15 completions last week. It's a different game, obviously. Their defense was so good. But who do they play this week?
They play the
Atlanta Falcons.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
In Atlanta, right?
I believe it's in Atlanta, yes. So think about how you how do you imagine this game goes between these two teams? Like, what do you think Atlanta wants to do?
They want to run the ball as much as possible to limit the clock. They don't want Desmond Ridder to throw it unless they have to.
Correct.
And they want their defense to be out there being able to help, again, ball control.
All the way around, 1,000% agree. I think Green Bay can kind of match wits with Atlanta in that regard. So I think it's going to be a low-volume passing game for Jordan Love. So I think that if Christian Watson's available, I am not playing Romeo Doubs. And if we get more reporting on Sunday that Watson's out, but Doubs will continue to be limited, I'm still not going to play him because you got lucky if you played him in week 1. 48% of the snaps, 4 catches turned into a fantasy output of just a ridiculous 18.6 points.
Yeah. If you started him, you kind of got lucky.
You got super lucky, but that's part of fantasy football. I'm not trying to, dissuade you from that reality. Like, it happens often, right? But it does feel like the clock will strike midnight on Romeo Doubs if Watson's back or Romeo Doubs is still limited.
I'm interested to see how that plays out. Let's talk about the Arizona Cardinals field in week 1. Joshua Dobbs, their quarterback, scored 0.98 fantasy points at the quarterback position. Now, when your quarterback only scores 0.98 fantasy points, does that give you a lot of confidence to want to start the wide receivers from that team the following week?
It does not. Okay. It's kind of borderline, though, for Hollywood Brown.
And that's where we're at. That's the question.
3 catches, 28 yards, plus 1 long rush for nearly 30 yards. So Hollywood Brown got 6 opportunities in week 1. They're kind of a disaster offense.
Kind of is
what
really
a nice
polite.
way of putting it,
really
right? So
sweet of you.
I think there was a thought process coming into the season that if Hollywood Brown was the clear-cut number 1 guy in an offense, that just by being the number 1 option, that would be enough volume for him to be a top 30-ish wide receiver.
Yep.
I think that's plausible, but I think the upside is severely limited in this offense. So that's what I would say about Hollywood Brown, is that he still hovers right around a flex consideration for me, a lower-end flex consideration. Daniel, what's the upside, though, in this offense? 0.98 fantasy points last week for Josh Dobbs?
0.98.
0.98 fantasy points. So let's say that number explodes all the way to like 10 fantasy points this week. Like, do you really think those 10 fantasy points are because Hollywood Brown has 150 yards and a touchdown?
I don't. And that's part of the thing that's really tough now for me as an Antonio Brown, as a Hollywood Brown manager, is the fact that I drafted him likely thinking that Colt McCoy was going to help sustain at least a floor of fantasy value for him. I don't know, especially after 1 week, that I have that same vibe with Joshua Doubs. I don't know what I can do about it at this point.
I mean, they're a mess.
It's a tough one.
They're a mess. They're team 32 of 32.
Ideally, I want to go a different direction in the flex position at wide receiver if I can, rather than starting Hollywood Brown this week.
Feel the same. Yeah, I mean, the upside's so limited.
So limited. Are you buying this Kendrick Bourne game from week 1?
There are a couple of things I'm buying. I mean, I think he's a good player, right? I think that Mac Jones is going to be a much more polished, refined. He's a capable quarterback, right? They had an actual offense in week 1, and what happened? Mac Jones threw for over 300 yards and was quarterback 2 on the week.
Yep.
But what I am selling, because I have him as wide receiver 46, is the idea that he can consistently emerge as the number 1 target in this Patriots offense. They went wide receiver by committee in week 1. Let me read you the box score from week 1 in terms of the Patriots pass catchers and who got how much work.
Okay.
And this is, I'll try to be fast because there are a lot of players that caught passes. Players that caught a pass from Mac Jones in week 1. 6 for Kendrick Bourne, 6 for Ramondre Stevenson, 5 for Hunter Henry, 4 for Pop Douglas, 3 for Mike Gesicki, 4 for Juju Smith-Schuster, 5 for Zeke, 2 for Ty Montgomery. Kayshon Boutte had 4 targets as well. So they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys that had at least 3 targets in week 1. By contrast, in that same game, the Eagles had 3 such players. So it's a committee in this New England passing game right now. So I think he's a smart bench stash right now. I saw him added in quite a few leagues. He is a good player. Like, him not playing last year was nonsensical for the Patriots, but I think for now still has some work to do to cement himself as a starter in 10-team leagues.
I agree. He's not a guy I'm looking at unless I am in a deeper league. If you're in, and this is where it becomes that conversation, you're in a 14, 16-team league, you're starting to have that conversation of you got to find guys that are going to be out
he'll
there.
be started in, like, I was looking at it because I play in the War Room, which, and it's like, he's looking at the rosters, like, he's a clear-cut starter based off of, I think, the roster he's on. It's like, oh yeah, like, he should be starting. He might be the better flex in their second flex, and the players on the bench are like absolutely non-starters as it pertains to Kendrick Bourne conversations.
Yep.
But in a 10 or 12 team league, I would feel like it'd be a stretch right now.
Okay, so then I think this next one's a really good conversation. Let's talk about DJ Moore.
Yeah.
Field Yates, these are all the players who had more targets from the Chicago Bears in week 1 than DJ Moore. Rashawn Johnson, Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet, Khalil Herbert, Deontay Foreman, and Chase Claypool.
Yeah.
Chase Claypool actually had just as many as DJ Moore.
Okay.
You traded with the Carolina Panthers and made this huge thing about how this kid's going to come in and be the number 1 wide receiver for Justin Fields. In week 1, he gets 2 targets, 2 catches, and 14 yards.
It came early, by the way. It was like early, and then all of a sudden it kind of like just immediately went away. You know, obviously a difficult week 1 for the Bears offense. One of 2 things happens when you have that kind of performance as the Bears did in week 1. One is it sustains and it's a problem, and this offseason would be really compelling for the Bears because they might have to make a Justin Fields decision in 2024.
Yep.
The alternative is you quickly realize just how much work you have to do while acknowledging that you have enough pieces in place now to be a capable offense, and you get back on track in a hurry. DJ Moore is a part of the solution, not the problem. The problem in week 1 was I don't think just the offensive game plan, but also the fact that he got shadowed by Jair Alexander.
Okay.
Now, he could draw a Carlton Davis shadow this week. Mike has the wide receiver cornerback piece that'll be up on ESPN.com shortly. That being said, Carlton Davis missed practice on Wednesday, toe injury. He's an excellent player for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so that would make me feel a bit more optimistic. I was wondering if I was too low on DJ Moore during the preseason when I had him as like wide receiver 24 or something. Week 1 was discouraging. I'm optimistic it'll get right, but because of the potential for a shadow and some of the things that we saw in week 1, I've got him as wide receiver 33.
It was, I feel like discouraging is a really, again, a nice way to put it, because the idea that Deontay Foreman out-targeted DJ Moore
in really?
Week 1.
That's surprising
just
to me.
like, guys, what are we doing here in this offense? Like,
It's
how are we not
weird
manufacturing touches for DJ Moore? That's why you brought him here.
Yeah, the strange part, too, for me as it pertains to the Bears offense is that, like, I think Lou Getsy can coach. I mean, I thought he did some good things last year with Justin Fields in a very different set of circumstances. I don't think this is one where the coordinator doesn't have what it takes to be the right visionary for an offense. So I was surprised all the way around by how that one unfolded.
Me too. All right, let's move ahead and talk about the Saints wide receivers field. We saw these guys, like all of them were kind of involved. Chris Olave, Michael Thomas was definitely involved early.
Yes.
And then we saw Rashid Shaheed look fantastic, just like he did towards the end of last year. Is this a situation where the Saints can actually support 3 fantasy wide receivers? I'm going to say this. I don't think this is a situation where the Saints can support 3 fantasy wide receivers, but there is at least a question right now around Rashid Shaheed based on what he did at the end of last year and how he started in Week 1. It's a question that I know a lot of fantasy managers are asking. Would you think about him here in Week 2?
The answer for me is no. I've got him as wide receiver 52, and there are a couple of reasons why.
Tell me why.
He played 54% of the snaps in Week 1. So to have the day that he did, that like efficiently, that's tough to do over and over and over again. Moreover, this was a game last week where the Saints could not run the ball at all. The Titans had the nastiest run defense in the NFL last year. Based off one game this year, it looks like they might have the exact same level of a nasty run defense. Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, both played at least 78% of the snaps. Not going to lie, I kind of wish Chris Olave played like 98% of the snaps, not just 78% of the snaps. But he did ball out, obviously. My answer is no. They played the Panthers on Monday. I think that they can run the football really effectively against the Panthers. I think they can move the football effectively enough on the ground that they won't have to throw it as much as they did in Week 1. So I'm fading Rashid Shaheed. 3 pass catchers in this offense, like, I'm not even certain that 2 wide receivers will be consistently relevant for fantasy. So I have him outside my top 50 for wide receivers, but definitely a bench stash right now because he can freaking fly. And they clearly do want to get him the ball when he's on the field. I just don't know if a 50% playtime player can really be in a Week 2 lineup.
I'm with you on that. And I'm not looking at Michael Thomas as a guy that I really want to start this week either. Really, it's just Chris Olave here for me in this wide receiving core. But there's an opportunity that if it was just one of these guys rather than both of them, that someone would emerge for fantasy value for us fantasy managers.
100% agree.
So we'll keep watching that as we get deeper into the season. Let's talk about the running backs. What on earth do you think that you should do with Jamal Williams?
I think you should play him in Week 2. I mean, I think he's a consideration. I have him as running back 25. So he's right on the fringe as an RB2.
20 touches in Week 1, I think?
He did against, again, nasty run defense. The Panthers are not nasty on run defense. We saw them last week get absolutely smothered by Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson. Jamal Williams should be in line for 15 to 20 rushing attempts this week. I think that's good enough. He can pay that off, obviously, with a touchdown. He had 2 catches last week, which isn't necessarily going to wow you, but last year in Detroit, as we know, it was like 17 carries, 18 carries, 19 carries with 0 targets over a 3-game stretch.
I'm almost positive, no joke, I'm almost positive he had 7 receptions for the entire season.
That sounds correct. Yeah, 7. So he is what's 2 divided by 7? Almost 30% of the way there.
We're already there
just through one game. And he might not even play that much once Alvin Kamara is back. So I think he's a fringe RB2 this week because I do believe they'll move the football effectively against a Carolina defense that Derek Brown's an awesome player up front, but they're going to have a hard time slowing down the Saints running game on Monday night.
He's one of those guys that you just don't, here we are in Week 2, you don't really feel like excited about starting Jamal Williams.
No. There are definitely higher upside players. No 2 ways about it.
When you get 20 touches in an offense like this, though, like it's tough because you've got to find a way. You're looking for volume a lot of times. So we like Jamal Williams as a low-end RB2 or a flex play. Do you think that Isaiah Pacheco, after what he did in Week 1, is someone you could look at as a potential RB2 or flex play?
Here's a good example of one that I have him ranked a couple of slots lower than Jamal Williams, but I think the upside's way better for Isaiah Pacheco because if you told me that one of these 2 guys had 100 rushing yards on like 16 carries, it's definitely Isaiah Pacheco. Pacheco also got 4 catches in Week 1 on like designed passing game concepts, not like
that was nice.
Mahomes is under duress and just like, flicks it and Pacheco is just sort of sitting there. That part I thought was really important. So I think Pacheco is also on that borderline as like an RB2. The discouraging part was that the Chiefs obviously relied on Clyde Edwards-Helaire a little bit early. Jerick McKinnon played the most snaps, highest percentage of snaps amongst Chiefs running backs. Not a major surprise there. But
1 touch.
One for Jeremy Kittle.
One touch for Jeremy Kittle.
One catch, yes. One catch for, I believe, 10 yards. Yes. Yeah. So it's a committee here, right? Like the idea that one Chiefs running back is ever going to dominate touches or snaps, completely foreign. Never count on it unless everybody else gets hurt. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire was sick on Wednesday. If he's not available, that boosts Pacheco up a little bit. But playing under 50% of the snaps and handling just 8 rushing attempts in week 1, I think he's more like a 12 to 15 touch per game guy if he's going to stay that involved in the passing game than he is a 20 touch per game guy. They also are going to have to throw it a bunch on Sunday because they play the Jaguars. This could be a shootout city.
Do you think that we'll see more running back usage from the Chiefs than what we saw in week 1? They only had 14 rushes, and they were getting, this is not like me, tied in the Detroit Lions, but like there was no room to run. 14 rushes for 45 yards for all the running backs.
Yeah.
That's not what I would typically expect for the Kansas City Chiefs. I still feel like there is value somewhere in here, but I guess that my whole thought is Isaiah Pacheco seeing that passing game usage, right, in week 1 and understanding how much this offense struggled to run the football.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder, you get Travis Kelce back, you're able to open things up, and do we see a better version of this running game in week 2 than what we saw in week 1? And I know I have Pacheco also outside my top. I think he's running back 24, 25 for me, but I think there's more value here than maybe I'm giving it credit for.
So you're saying you think the Travis Kelce impact could be not just on the passing game, but also on the running game?
I think so. Because
a little bit.
The Lions, when you are, if you go into that game as a defense and there's no Travis Kelce,
make the running game beat you.
Yeah, like I kind of, you're going to, well, I think especially after watching Kadarius Toney, you're definitely going to make the running game beat you. I mean, the Lions played that team at least in week 1 the way that they needed to in order to win. So I just wonder that question. Yeah. Understanding the question marks around the wide receivers and what happens there.
Okay.
I don't want to do a board bet on it, but I'm curious how that works.
I don't feel strongly that like the Chiefs running game will look dramatically different on Sunday. I would say the much more prominent focus will certainly be on the passing game. That's what I can't wait for.
No,
I think it's a massive game for. I just have a Patrick Mahomes feeling on Sunday. They're 0-1. Backs are kind of against the wall because not that the AFC showed great in week 1, but all of a sudden it feels like there is more openness to the AFC than in prior years. I just have a big game feeling for Patrick Mahomes on Sunday. I mean, whoa,
big limb there.
Hey, didn't we decide there's no such thing as a big limb?
Oh yeah,
going out on a limb.
Out on a limb there. You're right.
But yes, I think Mahomes and the Chiefs just bounce back in a massive way because it sucks to lose in week 1 no matter which team you are, unless you're trying to tank for Caleb Williams. But when you're the defending champs and there's so much hoopla surrounding them, but if you get 0-1 multiplied by the return of likely Chris Jones and Travis Kelce, huge week for Patrick Mahomes on Sunday.
Totally agree. All right, let's talk about Javonte Williams.
Let's do it.
Do you think he's going to be a lineup lock here in his second week? We watched him week 1, looked good.
No,
Samaje Perine both were utilized. Is that part of the reason why he's not a lineup lock? Is because Samaje Perine was used to?
It's not. It's close to a lineup lock. I've got him as RB21, so I'm not down on Javonte Williams. I just, I thought it was, as I said yesterday, wildly impressive to be back on the field.
Yes.
That soon after that catastrophic of an injury. But Samaje Perine played a lot. As you said yesterday, looked pretty solid. Yesterday, Sean Payton was talking about Jaleel McLaughlin needing to get more opportunities because what the Broncos seem to really lack, and part of this is because there's no Jerry Jeudy as well, but who's the most explosive player on the Broncos offense right now?
That's active and actually playing?
Yeah.
Adam Troutman?
I don't know. Maybe. I have no idea.
He's the Joker. So I really don't. I don't think that.
But he's hurt now, so it's crazy. Yeah, I think that they want more explosive plays, which is why Sean Payton brought up Jaleel McLaughlin yesterday. It would be Marvin Mims. They need more of him too. So yes, I agree with you. Your indecision on this answer tells me what I'm sort of trying to convey. So wouldn't stun me if we see a little bit more Jaleel McLaughlin, a little bit more. And I've got Javonte at running back 21. I don't think the workload gets decidedly larger, and 4 catches was good. 5 yards was not good, right? 4 catches, 5 yards on 6 targets. Like that to me was dump off city much more than like, let's draw something up here for Javonte. I've got him RB 21. I don't want to sound like I'm crushing him. I'm just not quite there where it's like, I see a ton of upside right now for Javonte Williams.
I think part of that is because of the way that they split snaps. Williams had 28 snaps. Samaje Perine had 26. I don't think they're willing just to let Javonte go out and be the guy alone yet.
Which I can't blame them, right?
No.
They can't blame him for that.
So even though right now in week 2, ideally, we might want them to do that for us as fantasy managers. Just unlock Javonte Williams.
Sure.
If we want him to be healthy for a full season. You don't really want that.
Yes.
If you drafted him, you want him to be around for the full season.
Sure.
All right, one more question on these running backs. Do you think that you can start both of these Detroit Lion running backs in week 2?
I think there are people who are going to not start Jahmyr Gibbs after what happened in week 1.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. This is where you got to take a moment and settle and just take a big step back and look at these things. Okay. Jahmyr Gibbs gets you 8 fantasy points. That sounds bad, right?
Yep.
What would you say is a number that you're kind of like, yeah, if he averaged that per game, that's pretty darn solid. Is it 14 points, 15 points, 16 points?
Solid, I would say 14 points is solid.
Okay. And like very good, then it's like 16 or 17?
Like 16, 17 plus.
And then like elite would be 20
plus.
Okay.
Yep. So
if you're looking for very good, if he gets double the points he got in week 1, that would be very good.
Yep.
He played 27% of the snaps. That number could easily double at some point, right? Maybe it was 30%. But the point is that like he could double his snap usage at some point sooner than later. Dan Campbell said it's going to be more and more of Jahmyr Gibbs as the season goes on. The eye test certainly tells you that this is a player who is the most explosive back and probably he's the most explosive player on the roster. He's so freaking fast.
Let me say this. David Montgomery, and I love David Montgomery, 3.5 yards per rush.
Totally.
Jahmyr Gibbs, 6 yards per carry in week 1. He also had 4.4 yards after first contact.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He looked explosive. Like you said, the eye test, everything about Jahmyr Gibbs far and away looks like the better running back.
So you have to decide this. Are you willing to put your faith in Ben Johnson? If you're willing to put your faith in Ben Johnson, the Lions offensive coordinator, then he should not just be starting, but he should be the higher-ranked Lions player. Ooh. If you told me that if we simulated week 2 100 times, I would tell you that, and you told me that like one of the 2 Lions running backs reached 12 fantasy points, I would say 70% of the time that's David Montgomery, and 30% of the time it's Jahmyr Gibbs. But if you also did that same number of simulations and you told me that a Lions running back, I keep saying Dolphins, a Lions running back reached 20 fantasy points.
Yep.
15 times out of those 100 simulations, I'd say, yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs was 14 of those 20 fantasy points.
Yep.
So that's how you have to look at it, in my opinion. You have to put your faith here in Ben Johnson. Is it a bit daunting? Yes, but the number doesn't even have to be 55 or 60% of the snaps. He could play on 45, 40% of the snaps and just get a couple more targets and rip one long one. And all of a sudden that could be, 14, 15 points, because in a league that is full of the rarest athletes in the world, it took me like 4 plays to realize that Jahmyr Gibbs was different than almost every other player on that field.
You can see with the Lions the lack of speed that they have in other areas, and I don't want to be negative about them, but like Jahmyr Gibbs came in and just looked immediately faster than everyone else on that offense. If he doesn't trip up at the goal line and gets in the end zone, I think we're having a different conversation. Then he scored 14 points his first week.
And we're having the
totally
tenor
different
is
conversation.
So different on the Jahmyr Gibbs conversation.
Yep. All right.
We have time for one question?
I think we're going to take some email questions.
Field@fantasyfocus.org.
That's
questions, thoughts. You want to tell us about Daniel's beard and what kind of oil he should be using. You want to send us your favorite recipe for your football Sundays. Do it. Field@fantasyfocus.org. Keep firing away there.
All right, so let's see what we got here for this first question, or the only question that we have for today. It comes from our buddy William, wants to know, who do I flex in a 12-team standard 0 PPR league? 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 flex, so it's pretty standard with us. DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, Brian Robinson, or DeAndre Hopkins.
Okay, so he needs 1 flex.
0 PPR league. Does that mean not PPR?
That means non-PPR. Yep. So I saw DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams,
DeAndre Hopkins.
Yep. And who was the third? Can we throw that tab up there one more time? Okay, Brian Robinson. Okay.
DeAndre Swift is out.
I think it comes down to Jamal Williams or Brian Robinson.
I'm totally with you.
And I'm going to go with Jamal Williams here.
Really? I would probably go with Brian Robinson.
Okay, so but I have those guys ranked pretty closely. Here's the good news, is that they kind of get there in the same way, right?
Yes,
They're both very volume-dependent runners.
Yep.
I think Robinson's more talented. I think Jamal Williams might have a better matchup he plays Monday, so whatever, Monday, week 2. So I will flip towards Jamal Williams in the slightest of edges.
Ooh, and I'm going up against Denver with Brian Robinson there. I'll tell you what, though. Do you want to do another board bet?
Why not? It's a non-PPR board bet. You want to?
Yeah, all right, let's do it.
Why not? Let's do it. Let's close the show with another board bet.
I say Brian Robinson scores more fantasy points in week 2 than Jamal Williams.
I say Jamal Williams outscores Brian Robinson in week 2. Put it on the board.
Put it on the board.
Obviously talking non-PPR.
Yeah,
you know what's going to happen? We're going to look at the PPR rankings, and I'm going to be like, oh, I won, and then realize that it was not a PPR.
No, you know what's going to be hilarious, though, is it's going to be like one of them scores like 4.1 and the other scores 3.95. We'll be like, yeah, baby. Remember that the old Beamer ball, like that great graphic that goes around on Twitter like every so often where it's like the ugliest game of all time takes place. Frank Beamer, longtime Virginia Tech head coach, holding his arms up because Virginia Tech walked off with like a 6-3 win over Wake Forest in double overtime. Great. Love it.
I love sports. Isn't it just great that football is back?
Makes me so happy.
I love being able to watch football.
Happy. Yeah.
Hey, make sure you get together with someone sooner or later to watch one of these games. Thursday Night Football, Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, just a whole Sunday. Like, football is more fun when you hang out with your friends while you're doing it, so make sure you go find somebody to watch some football with them. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We love you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We will be back tomorrow. We're going to have Field and I with Mike Clay and Stefania Bell getting you all set up for everything you need for week 2. Don't forget to love each other. Be kind to yourself. You have earned that. We cannot wait to see you guys next week.
Who you taking tonight? Who you taking tonight?
Watching Thursday Night Football.
Eagles or Vikings?
Field. Come on. I'm taking the Eagles.
E-A-G. Wait, did they do that? L-E-S.
Sure, why not?
Fly, Eagles, fly. There we go. That's what I was thinking of. Fly, Eagles, fly. I'm a really not smart person. I don't know what I'm doing. Eagles big tonight.
Eagles big. I'm with you. All right, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.
What?
What are you doing?
I don't.
E-A-G-L-E-S. Eagles.
Our
Eagles.
director.
Eagles.